God, thank you. Thank you for the way that you've worked in Lloyd's life. And today, God, I just ask that you would give us a heart and ears that are ready to hear. Lord, you said many times, those who have ears, let them hear. So God, give us ears today to hear you through Lloyd. Give Lloyd all that he needs to speak, and in your name we pray. Amen. All yours, Lloyd.
Good evening. Originally, I had planned to bring a large 3-ring binder with a lot of pages. I had planned to tell you that Pastor Greg told me I could talk for up to 2.5 hours. That wouldn't be nice, would it? One of the things that I never noticed before is that when the pastors talk, they're not coming out of that speaker over there, they're coming over here. Some of the things you notice when you can't see. Most of what I've accomplished in the last 40 years, I wouldn't have been able to do without the love and support of Kathy. My love, my best friend. When I met her, she'd just come back to Marshall with 5 children. The oldest, 11 years, and the youngest, just a baby. It takes a very special person to be willing to take on a totally blind man as a husband to raise that family. I learned a lot in a big hurry. I learned to build things, bookcases, cubbies, and computer tables, and I learned to do plumbing work, fix bicycles, and also a lot of work under the hood of our cars. A lot of credit for that has to go to Norm Persky from General Trading here in Marshall. He would say, "Do you have such and such a tool?" I would say, "No, but I bet you have one you could sell me." I had both his business and home phone, and he told me to call him anytime if I needed help. God gives us special friends when we need them. I'm truly blessed by God. He sent me many wonderful people to help me on my journey, and I guess the devil has sent me a few too. First, though, a word or two about blindness. Some people believe that if you're blind, you're also deaf. Nowadays, with hearing aids, that perhaps they're right. But years ago, this brings me to one of my really neat individuals I want to mention. Grady Kickle was the head of Marshall State Services for the Blind, so I guess I was his client, but it never really seemed that way. I often visit schools to talk about blindness and other things, but this is the first visit I remember vividly. On a Friday afternoon, I got a call from Grady. "Hey, Lloyd, what you doing?" "Nothing much. What do you want me to be doing?" "Want to visit a school with me?" "Okay, when?" "In 5 minutes." "Okay, meet you out front." So I grabbed Mandy, my seeing eye dog, second shepherd, a bunch of 3x5 cards for alphabets or name, and my brailer, and ran out to the front of the building. Kids are great. They get it quite often. Duchess, my previous shepherd, didn't like small children. I don't know whether they pulled her tail or what, but I forgot to tell the kids not to mob the dog. Before I knew what was happening, the table where Mandy was lying was buried in kids. I was horrified, but when I asked Grady, he said that all he could see was the tip of a waving tail. During the questions, a little girl asked me what it was like to be blind. I told her I didn't really know because I'd never been able to see. I asked her, "So what's it like to be able to see?" I can still hear the giggle. "I don't know, but it's pretty good." The first people God sent in my path are my parents, I guess. I think my dad was a workaholic, so if I wanted to be with him, I worked. From the time I can remember, I had a tool in my hand. I don't really know how old I was, but Dad had me taking out U-magnets from an old Model T engine. Our chimney sweep had an old Model T with a couple of missing magnets in the magneto. My folks were giving people. They shared looking after my grandfather with my aunt and uncle. And when Roy, my grandfather's stable hand, had nowhere to go, they took him in too. I think they were always taking care of somebody. Okay, quick biography. I was born on a farm in South Lebanon, Maine. The deed said 25 acres more or less. It was a quarter of a mile from the border with New Hampshire. My sister said that was so I could nip across the border if the law was after me. In September 1945, a month before my 6th birthday, I was sent to Perkins School for the Blind in Watertown, Massachusetts. It was a boarding school, and I got to go home every 2 or 3 weeks, and I was one of the lucky ones. Some of the kids had to stay there all year. Our house mother was a woman whose qualification for taking care of little children was the fact that she had been the matron in a women's prison. She wasn't nice. My first breakfast was shredded wheat. Mrs. Hanny whacked me because I'm left-handed. She put the spoon into my right hand and said, "Eat." Well, I just sat there. Then the maid, a wonderful Scottish lady with hands like sandpaper, came along and said, "You don't know how to eat with your right hand, do you?" And she showed me. Otherwise, I'd probably be still sitting there. That school was a sad place, but without it, I don't think I would have accomplished anything. Eye operations back then were not good. Partially sighted kids would go for an operation filled with hope, but I was pretty sure they'd come back totally blind, and most of the time I was right. Also, we lost a lot of children. Scarlet fever, diphtheria, a couple of kids to polio. To me, that school was a nightmare, and I still have dreams of driving through that gate. When I was 16, I knew there was going to be a lot of things I was not going to be able to do, and I decided to take my life. I wasn't sure how, but I'm really sure I would have done it. I had, however, promised my math teacher, a Greek and Latin scholar who was my first-year Latin teacher, that I would help her clear out her classroom. I was chatting away at the top of a ladder when all of a sudden she said, "Come down here a minute." When I got down there, she put her arms around me and said, "Don't do what you're thinking of doing. Make it so that your being here makes this world a better place." God had to have sent her. How did she know? I'll never know. But shortly after that, I met God. I've been in the sequoias, and it's awesome to think that those trees were growing during Jesus' ministry. But I met God in Franconia Notch in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. You walk through the flume, rushing water, little waterfalls, and you come up into some tall trees. Far away from highway sounds, all you can hear is the breeze way up in the tops of those trees. God spoke to me that day. I think of peace. I think that things were going to be okay sometime. I really hope those trees are still there, that pollution hasn't killed them in the same way that a lot of trees in the Alps have been killed. Well, after Perkins in Watertown, Mass., I attended Colby College in Waterville, Maine. A lot of water in my background. Actually, I think the water in Waterville consisted of watering holes, if you take my drift. There were a lot of bars in that town. Colby was good to me. I learned a whole lot, although my GPA didn't show it. We had reading periods at the end of each semester, and my readers had their own work to do. Also, I took a lot of extra courses. If I'd wanted to take 3 sets of comprehensive exams, I could have graduated with a triple major: French, German, and history. In the summer, I started studying for my master's degree, and I got my first teaching job at the New York School for the Blind in the Bronx. You could be mugged in the middle of the afternoon in that area. Nobody would pay any attention. However, I think I was pretty safe. Penny, my boxer, was willing to take on anyone. And later, Duchess scared the dickens out of just about everyone. Besides, I didn't look very wealthy. I had some wonderful friends in New York. Joe, a wonderful black man who really loved those kids, would make me a sweet potato pie whenever he wanted me to do something. "Joe, what do you want?" "Now, Lloyd, don't be that way." That man conned me into taking on the drama club with Lee, my first wife. It was my job to show those kids around the stage so they wouldn't be afraid. Those were fantastic kids. The principal of that school said we would be master teachers if we worked there for 5 years. Never made it, because I only worked there 4 years. I regretted leaving there, but an accident, my life has been full of them, happened. I'd been applying for teaching positions anywhere away from New York City. And we were flying from Minneapolis to Kennedy Airport. I was visiting with this lady who was talking about the new college on the prairie. She said I should apply. So I said, well, why not? I had tons of rejection slips anyway, so why not one more? The dean, whom I never met, was interested, darn book, in my hobbies, I think. I listed them as choral singing, classical music, and gun repair. I stated that my first an interview, but they don't have a job was my reply. But you want to be sure that you want to work there, and the rest is history. I met my future boss, Harry, and that was the beginning of my career out here. When I consider my time at SMSU, it's hard to know what to talk about and what to leave out. 37 years of teaching, that's a lot of water under the bridge. The mechanical engineering technology department asked me to be a consultant to tell them what a blind person could do in that sort of a shop. I told them I couldn't do that because I didn't know anything. But I said I would take classes and try anything they threw my way. That's when I met Randy Replinger, a good friend, an awesome lecturer, and a very, very wise man. I remember a day when Bob O'Brien was teaching the rest of the students how to do a threading operation on an engine lathe. Sounded like Greek to me. And I asked Randy, can I do this? Considered a moment and said, well, I don't know, Lloyd. Why don't you try it? I did. It took me the whole hour, and then I had to clear the machine at the end of the hour. After that, I had time to think about it, and the next time it took me about 5 minutes to set it up, and I was actually able to thread that piece. Randy and Jean Replinger were wonderful people. When I lost Duchess, they walked me back and forth to school to keep me in shape. And when I lost Mandy, I think probably 11 or 12 years later, they did the same. How can you repay something like that? That's God working in my life. By that time, I was working on clocks. Another accident in my life. It's also a long story. Jerry Kangas, another one of my best friends, told his wife, Fran, that a blind guy was fixing clocks. Jerry, how does he do that? Well, I don't know, but he does it. Well, I fixed her clock, and thank heavens it worked. First of all, Jerry and his students computerized me, which is a long story in itself. Then I sort of became one of the group. We formed a construction company in the summer, and I learned from that wonderful man how to install vinyl siding, how to build stud walls with window and door openings. And in 1993, when it rained sometimes 3 or 4 times in a day. We shingled at least 25 roofs, I think. Jerry showed me how to make a gauge stick. We were doing 3-tab shingles then. I found that it was easier to use my fingers to line them up. Having to skip a little bit here. I will always be grateful to that man for saying, "Oh yeah, you can do that." God has blessed me with friends who have helped me do things that many blind people never get a chance to try. One thing, though, was interesting carrying things with Jerry. A plank, for instance. "Go left, White." I went left. "White, other left," as I fell off the curb. I love that man. When he left, we were both crying, and I was giving him a hug, and then all of a sudden I gasped because I discovered Jerry had a big bushy beard. A lot of things you never notice sometimes. I love teaching, but sometimes things went wrong. There was cheating. Usually I didn't mind. Most of the time I knew who it was that was doing it, and they had to work harder cheating than they would otherwise have had to work. I used to have my students memorize things. One day a girl came in to recite her poem. She was looking down at the table. When she finished, I reached over and pulled out the sheet of paper. She was reading. "Okay, try it again." She said she couldn't, but I said, "You just did, and I'll help if you need it." She didn't, and I was really proud of that girl. When I married Kathy, her family attended Wesley Methodist Church, which later became Cornerstone. When the choir began singing, I tried to harmonize under my breath. Kathy told me either to keep quiet or join the choir. Thank the Lord they let me join the choir. I don't think I'd ever have been able to keep quiet. That's where I met Cheryl and Larry Jeska. For about 40 years, Larry has sung beside me, looked after me. He has an awesome voice and a ton of talent. Cheryl, well, she's my music idol. When she's playing, Kathy and I have to come and listen. As an accompanist, heavenly days, she knows what you're going to do before you do. She's absolutely amazing. In the church, we didn't just sing. For a while, we had what we called Matthew 25. We gave out rescue food to people who came to us on Saturday mornings. Now I get a chance to work at the kitchen table food shelf with Leo Bass and Charles Kaufman and a bunch of other wonderful people. I also got lots of chances to wash dishes for meals and bazaars and the like. Doug Hamilton and I spent a lot of time doing that, but that's not all we did together. There were, they were with me when we formed that first version of the Wesley Band. Cheryl was playing an out-of-tune piano, and I was playing the accordion next to her. I think she and I were both cringing. We sounded terrible. I spent a lot of time after that trying to get rid of that band, but God had other ideas. We played for nursing homes, for assisted living places, all over the places. That band survived until just recently when Art Cadwell, our guitar player, passed away. God has also given me 7 wonderful dogs full of totally unconditional love. If you have a dog, you know exactly what I mean. I think a dog is perhaps a reflection of God's love. An anthem I sang a long time ago says it well. God is love. His mercy lightens all the paths in which we rove. Bliss he wakens, and woe he lightens. God is wisdom. God is love. Now we come to Living Word. Most of you knew June because she never knew a stranger. She's passed away. Several people helped me out. Marie Sample, Becky and Willie Chance. As my dad used to say, Becky can really go like a house of fire. Then there's Ellie and Jacob. Ellie figured out that I would need the praise songs, so she began sending them to me in emails. Now Jacob has taken up that chore, and I am really grateful to them both. God has blessed me with all of us. He has blessed us with a church full of wonderful, caring people and 3 pastors who are also wonderful, caring people. They have to be wonderful to put up with someone like me. Thank you very much for your patience. I love you all.